Hello. Today I'm going to talk about creating change intentionally by rewriting your script with a new cast of characters. In effect, bringing more characters onto the stage that you're playing on. And this particular topic was inspired by a course I finished recently at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. It was for alums, and it was called Ambidextrous Leadership. It's a new course that they're developing to help people really build more characters, build more muscles around using characters that might not be in our comfort zone wheelhouse, if you will. And this is really to address a very prevalent leadership problem, which I've alluded to in some prior videos, is that we tend to use the strengths that we naturally have, and frankly, the ones that are also rewarded in our companies. And these can go into hyperdrive. They can be overused and abused. And when that happens, the things that got us where we wanted to go, like being a controller, for example, where we might have been able to really control a situation, motivate people to go way beyond their comfort zones and get things done against all the odds. These things that are great skills, when they're used too often, they may actually work against our goals in terms of demotivating people, really burning them out, and not really cultivating the deep morale and motivation that we need to succeed as leaders overall. So that's really what inspired this. And what ends up happening is that, I just mentioned this controller syndrome, for example, and for a long time it's worked well for us. And frankly, in normal times, it was easier to be a controller because people had normal outlets to rest and recuperate and unwind, and social interactions that really helped to keep them going, to keep morale high. And in the situation that we're in now, it's tougher. And we really need to be mixing things up and bringing in new cast of characters to really use the right leadership skill at the right time. And these are often things that we have inside us, but they might be kind of small whispers of characters. They're just not, they're understudies, if you will. We haven't used them a lot, and so they're not used to center stage. And so, for example, with a controller, we might really be leading to people being hurt and intimidated by being pushed too much. We might be finding at this point that morale is low for our teams and maybe even across the company. And so a voice might be saying to you, there's a better way. There's a way that's more compassionate, but I don't know, this doesn't really fly so well in my company. This isn't really the skill that I've seen embodied by the best leaders here. And so, do I really want to rock the boat? Do I really want to go there? How do I bring this forward? This is really a question that a lot of the Booth alums were grappling with, because they're seeing this value in bolstering more skill sets and bringing more characters like empathy and compassion and inspiration and innovation to companies. And yet it can be tough to do that when there's been an ingrained culture for a really long time. And so we really grappled with, how do you take this forward in a way that would serve you and be something that could be adopted within an organization. So let me get into how we can address this, how to solve this. And as usual, I'm going to start with the ABCs. And the A is there's a few of them. So I'm going to kind of pile on some A's here. But the first one is awareness, and really, walking into a meeting with this awareness of, I normally show up maybe as this controller, and maybe I'm going to really have an intention to show up in a way that's a bit different this time, and maybe even prepare not just content for what you're going to do in the presentation, but maybe prepare a little bit of the kinds of questions that new role would play. So, for example, if we've been the controller, maybe we want to bring on stage the maverick, the one who's questioning the way things are done and innovating for new ways. Maybe we want to bring in the inspirer or the interpreter. And the second A is that we might want to ask questions that really really have those characters in mind, right? So if we're the maverick, we might say, for example, we had some great success during the pandemic doing things differently because we had to, but yet we're finding that this ended up bringing a whole new wave of innovation into the company. And so maybe this maverick role, maybe this innovation could be something that is institutionalized further, that is rolled out in a bigger way. Or maybe there's an inspirer question you ask with the leadership team. If morale is down, how might we empower people more and bring that to the forefront? You might also have an interpreter role. One of the issues a lot of our leaders grapple with is that even when they have the best intentions, and the controller often has the best intentions, it's to really help guide people and move them along and get things done. And even with those intentions, the impact may be very, very different. People interpret what you say very differently. And so even saying the same thing to a team of 50 people, you'll have a array of different responses in terms of how that's received. Some may be motivated, some may be intimidated. And so, how might an interpreter show up and really help make sure that there's a real understanding and there's a real empowerment amongst your employees? So that A of having awareness of what you want to show up as, and then acting differently with empowering questions, asking questions that are really opening people up is really great. The next one is B, and that's be brave. And bravery is showing up in different ways, as vulnerable, as transparent. Um, Vulnerability can be sharing a story of something that didn't go well and what you learned from it, and modeling that behavior. So people feel comfortable bringing diverse opinions and innovation to you in ways that they might not have before. It might be being transparent in that, we often have somebody who's sitting around a table and says, I'm going to play devil's advocate. And that's their way of really opening up a dialogue of, throwing a stone on the prevailing wisdom and maybe really looking at things very differently. And so what if we do that more broadly and show up and say, let's put our maverick hat on today and empower people to wear different hats and really bring those diverse opinions. It can really allow much more innovation to bubble up and much more diversity of perspective, which is something that is so valuable. And then C. C is a real important one because this is really about collaboration. And collaboration in that, we need to be the change that we want to see within our corporate cultures, but working with others can only help further that mission. And so collaborating with culture carriers who already know the culture very, very deeply, with your HR folks, maybe with internal coaches in the company that can really help guide you in a way that can be powerful and not step on toes. So collaborating is very important. And another thing that's another C is really looking at the core values of a company. This can really open the door for what's important to a company and light the way from where you are to where you want to be. So, for example, many companies I've worked for, service is a very important value. It's a core value. If leaders are showing up in a more controlling way and not listening, bringing up this core value of service and how you listen to customers and really respond to what they're bringing to you can be something that you roll out internally as well with employees. That can really light a way to maybe a new behavior and a norm that might not be as widely adopted, but can really work well for that company. And lastly, often folks hire an outside consultant who can really provide that outsider perspective, right? You can do that internally, but it can be more difficult. And we're asking and really empowering people now to wear different hats so they can. But certainly bringing in an outside consultant or a coach can also help disrupt and shake things up in a new way. So those are the strategies for dealing with this. And I highly recommend testing and learning and playing and seeing what works and engaging others in your pathway as you're doing this. And if you want to discuss this further, As always, please feel free to direct message me or email me, Stephanie@mindfiremastery.com. I have a lot of more tools and even a course around this that really helps to quiet the negative characters and really build up the very positive ones in a way that can serve in a much bigger, impactful way for your leadership. Thank you, and I'll talk to you next time.